My name is Declan. I'm a 21-year-old junior at Westlake University, majoring in economics with a minor in creative writing. Like many college students, I'm perpetually broke, which is how I ended up working the night shift at Savamart 3 nights a week. The pay is decent, the hours don't interfere with my classes, and most importantly, employee discount on groceries. When you're living on a diet of ramen and coffee, every penny saved matters. I'd been working at Savamart for about 4 months when he started. Theo. 6 feet of lean muscle with dark curly hair that fell over his forehead in a way that made me want to brush it back. Green eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. And God, did he smile, all the time, at everyone. Customers, coworkers, the cranky manager who never had a good word for anyone. Theo had been hired as the new stock manager, which meant he spent most of his shifts in the back of the store, organizing inventory and making sure the shelves stayed full. Our paths didn't cross much at first. I worked mainly at the checkout counter or stocking shelves on the floor. But I noticed him. How could I not? He moved with a quiet confidence that drew my eye whenever he entered a room. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at me too, but he'd quickly glance away, that perpetual smile twitching at the corners of his mouth. It wasn't until 3 weeks after he started that we actually spoke more than a passing, "Hey," in the break room. It was a Thursday night, slow as always. The store closed at midnight, but we usually stayed until about 1:30 a.m. to restock and clean. I was arranging a display of cereal boxes when I heard his voice behind me. "You're doing it wrong." I turned to find Theo leaning against the shopping cart, arms crossed over his chest, that smile playing on his lips. "Excuse me?" I said, more defensively than I meant to. He pushed off the cart and came to stand beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something woodsy and subtle. "The display? The boxes with the cartoon characters should be at eye level for kids. That's how you boost sales." He reached past me to rearrange a few boxes, his arm brushing against mine. "See? Are you seriously mansplaining cereal displays to me?" I asked, but I was fighting a smile of my own. He laughed, the sound warm and rich. "Sorry. Occupational hazard. I used to work for a marketing firm before this gig." "What happened? Did you get fired for being too enthusiastic about product placement?" His smile dimmed a little. "Something like that. What about you? College student, right?" I nodded. "Economics major at Westlake. Smart and sarcastic. Dangerous combination." He picked up an empty box and crushed it effortlessly. "Need help finishing this display? I'm caught up on inventory." We spent the next hour working side by side, talking about everything and nothing. He told me he was 24, had dropped out of college his senior year, and had an unhealthy obsession with 80s music. I told him about my classes, my tiny apartment that I shared with 2 other guys, and my dream of writing a novel someday. "So, economics and creative writing?" he said as we broke down empty boxes. "Unusual combination. One pays the bills, one keeps me sane," I replied. "At least that's the theory. And which is which?" His eyes met mine, genuinely curious. "I'll let you know when I figure it out." After that night, we fell into a routine. He'd find me during slow periods, and we'd talk while we worked. Sometimes about books or music, sometimes about the eccentric customers who came in at odd hours. I learned that he lived alone in a studio apartment downtown, that he had a sister in Seattle, and that he could name every country in alphabetical order, a party trick he perfected in high school. What he didn't talk about was why he'd left college so close to graduating, or what had happened at the marketing firm. Every time the conversation veered that way, he'd smoothly change the subject, that smile never wavering but his eyes growing distant. I found myself looking forward to our night shifts together, scheduling my study time around them. I told myself it was just nice to have a friend at work, someone who made the hours pass more quickly. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I knew it in the way my pulse quickened when he approached, and how I found excuses to work near him, in the dreams that left me flushed and embarrassed when I woke. But I kept it to myself. Office romances were complicated enough without adding the fact that I wasn't even sure if Theo was into guys. He never mentioned dating anyone, and I wasn't brave enough to ask. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in late October, about 2 months after Theo had started at Savamart. The store had been busier than usual for a weeknight, and we were running behind on restocking. At around 1 a.m., when most of the other employees had already left, Theo approached me as I was mopping the floor in aisle 7. "Hey, can you help me with something? Need to take inventory in the cold storage, and it'll go faster with 2 people. I glanced at the clock. "Sure, but don't we need to finish up soon? I've got an early class tomorrow." "It won't take long," he promised. 20 minutes tops. I followed him to the back of the store, past the swinging doors that led to the storage area. The walk-in freezer and refrigerator units were at the far end, massive metal doors with small windows. Theo grabbed a clipboard from a hook on the wall, and handed me a heavy jacket that hung nearby. "You'll want this. It gets cold in there." I shrugged into the jacket, which smelled faintly of the previous user's cologne, and followed Theo into the freezer. The cold hit me immediately, making me grateful for the extra layer. The space was larger than I'd expected, with metal shelving units filled with frozen foods lining the walls and creating narrow aisles in the center. "I'll count you, Mark," Theo said, handing me the clipboard. "Let's start with the ice cream." We moved through the aisles methodically, Theo calling out numbers while I checked them against the inventory list. Despite the cold, I found myself warming to the task, especially when Theo would lean close to point something out, his breath creating small clouds in the frigid air. We were nearly finished when it happened. A loud click, followed by the lights flickering briefly. Then darkness, except for the faint emergency light above the door. "What was that?" I asked, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the sudden quiet. Theo moved past me toward the door. "Power fluctuation, maybe? Let me check." I heard him try the handle, then push against the door. "Shit! What's wrong?" "Door's locked. The electronic security system must have engaged when the power fluctuated." A spike of panic shot through me. "Can't you override it?" "Not from in here. There's a manual release, but it's on the outside." I pulled my phone from my pocket, the screen illuminating my face with blue light. "No signal." "Of course." Theo's face appeared in the glow of my phone, his usual smile replaced by a grim line. "The night manager should do a final walkthrough before leaving. They'll find us." "And when will that be?" He checked his watch. "Usually around 2 a.m. I looked at my phone. 1:27 a.m. "So we're stuck in here for half an hour?" "More or less." He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "At least we've got jackets." I slid down against one of the shelving units until I was sitting on the cold floor. Theo joined me, our shoulders touching. "Sorry about this," he said after a moment of silence. "If I hadn't asked you to help me—" "It's not your fault," I interrupted. "Unless you secretly planned to trap us in a freezer together." That earned a genuine laugh. "Yeah, because hypothermia is my idea of a good time." We sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, the cold gradually seeping through my clothes despite the jacket. I found myself shivering. "You okay?" Theo asked, noticing my trembling. Just cold. I'll be fine. Without hesitation, he scooted closer and put his arm around my shoulders. Body heat, he explained. Basic survival technique. I stiffened at first, then relaxed into his side, grateful for the warmth. If you wanted to put your arm around me, you could have just asked, I joked, trying to mask my nervousness. Would you have said yes? His voice was soft, serious. I turned to look at him, our faces closer than they'd ever been. In the dim blue glow of my phone's screen, his features were shadowed, but his eyes were bright, questioning. Probably, I admitted, my heart hammering in my chest. A moment of silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken words. Then Theo reached up, brushing his fingers against my cheek. You're freezing, he murmured. That tends to happen in freezers, I said, aiming for sarcasm, but my voice came out breathless. His hand lingered on my face, and I found myself leaning into his touch. Declan, he said, my name like a question on his lips. I don't know who moved first. Maybe we both did. But suddenly his lips were on mine, warm despite the cold air around us. The kiss was tentative at first, a question being asked and answered. Then his hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer, and any hesitation evaporated. I'd imagined kissing Theo more times than I cared to admit, but the reality was better than any fantasy. His lips were soft but insistent, his stubble rough against my skin. He tasted like the mint gum he always chewed, sharp and sweet. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I couldn't help but laugh. Well, that's one way to stay warm. Theo grinned, that full, radiant smile that had first caught my attention. Been wanting to do that since my first day here. Really? I asked, surprised. Why didn't you? Wasn't sure if you were interested. Or if workplace romance was a good idea. He shrugged. Plus, I've got some baggage. The mysterious marketing job? He nodded, his smile fading slightly. It wasn't just a job. I was engaged to the boss's daughter. When I broke it off, I lost both the fiancé and the career in one go. Oh. I wasn't sure what to say. I'm sorry? Don't be. It was a mistake from the start. I was trying to be someone I wasn't. His fingers traced patterns on the back of my hand. Took me a while to be honest with myself about what I really wanted. And what's that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. His answer was another kiss, deeper than the first, his hand sliding inside my jacket to rest against my chest. I kissed him back eagerly, forgetting the cold, forgetting where we were, forgetting everything but the feel of his lips on mine, and his hands exploring my body through layers of clothing. We were so engrossed in each other that we didn't hear the door unlock. It wasn't until a beam of light hit our faces that we realized we were no longer alone. What the hell? We sprang apart like guilty teenagers to find the night manager, Gary, standing in the doorway, flashlight in hand, his expression a mixture of surprise and amusement. Electrical malfunction, Theo explained quickly, standing up and offering a hand to help me to my feet. We got locked in. Gary raised an eyebrow. And decided to make the best of it, I see. I felt my face burning despite the cold. We were just keeping warm, Theo finished, his hand still holding mine. Survival 101. Gary shook his head. Whatever. You're both adults. Just don't let it interfere with your work. He stepped back, holding the door open. Now get out of my freezer. We hurried past him, still hand in hand, not making eye contact. Once we were back in the employee area, Theo turned to me, that mischievous smile playing on his lips. Well, that was mortifying? I suggested. I was going to say memorable. He squeezed my hand. Look, I know this isn't how either of us planned the night to go, but I don't regret it. Not one bit. I looked at our intertwined fingers, then back at his face. Neither do I. Good. He leaned in for a quick kiss. Because I'd really like to see where this goes. Preferably somewhere with central heating. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. I think that can be arranged. We finished our shift in record time, both eager to leave. As we walked out to the parking lot, the night air felt warm compared to the freezer, but I barely noticed the temperature. All I could focus on was Theo, walking beside me, our hands occasionally brushing. So, he said as we reached my ancient Honda. What now? No, I replied, feeling brave. You give me your number, and I call you tomorrow, and we figure out a time to meet that doesn't involve frozen food or inventory lists. He grinned, taking my phone and entering his contact information. I was hoping you'd say that. As I drove home that night, I couldn't stop smiling. Getting locked in a freezer wasn't exactly the meet-cute I'd imagined, but somehow, it seemed perfectly fitting for us. Unexpected, a little uncomfortable, but ultimately warming something inside me I hadn't realized was frozen. The next day, true to my word, I called Theo. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop near campus that evening. I arrived early, nervousness making me fidgety. What if the connection we'd felt in the freezer had just been a product of the unusual circumstances? What if, in the harsh light of day, away from the intimacy forced by our confinement, the spark fizzled out? My fears dissipated the moment he walked through the door. Seeing him outside of work for the first time, dressed in jeans and a simple blue sweater that brought out the color of his eyes, I felt that same flutter in my stomach. He spotted me and his face lit up with that smile that had first drawn me to him. Hey, he said, sliding into the chair opposite mine. No frostbite, I see. All digits accounted for, I confirmed, wiggling my fingers. Though I think my ego is still a bit bruised from Gary catching us. Theo laughed. Could have been worse. At least we were still fully clothed. The barista brought our coffees, and we fell into easy conversation. Without the constraints of work, Theo was even more animated, his hands gesturing expressively as he told stories. I learned more about his brief engagement. Her name was Emma, and we were better as friends than fiancés. His college years? Almost made it through a business degree before I realized I hated it. And his dream of opening his own bookstore cafe someday. What about you? He asked after sharing a particularly hilarious story about a disastrous marketing campaign he'd overseen. What's Declan's 5-year plan? I stirred my coffee, considering. Finish my degree. Maybe grad school. Eventually find a job that doesn't make me want to gouge my eyes out with a spoon. Ambitious, he teased. What about the writing? The novel you mentioned? I was surprised he remembered that detail from our conversations at work. That's more of a pipe dream. Something I'd like to do, but not exactly practical. Practical is overrated, Theo said, leaning forward. Trust me, I tried the practical route. All it got me was an almost marriage to someone I didn't love and a job that bored me to tears. Fair point. But some of us don't have the luxury of throwing practicality to the wind. I'm not saying quit school to become a starving artist. I'm saying don't put your passion on hold indefinitely for some hypothetical someday. His eyes were intense earnest. Life's too short for that. Something in his words resonated with me. How many times had I pushed my writing aside for more important tasks? How many half-finished stories were languishing in folders on my laptop? Maybe you're right, I admitted. But for now, I should probably focus on passing macroeconomics. He smiled, reaching across the table to take my hand. All I'm saying is, make room for what makes you happy. Like this, for instance. The simple gesture of him holding my hand in public sent a thrill through me. Is that what this is? Something that makes you happy? So far? Definitely. His thumb traced circles on my palm. I like you, Declan. A lot. Even when we're not trapped in sub-zero temperatures. I like you too, I said, the words feeling inadequate but true. We stayed at the coffee shop until closing, talking and laughing, occasionally falling into comfortable silences. When we finally left, Theo walked me to my car, our shoulders bumping, hands brushing but not quite holding in the open air of the parking lot. I had a great time, I said as we reached my Honda. Good enough to do it again? He was standing close, his eyes reflecting the streetlights. Definitely. He smiled, then glanced around the nearly empty parking lot before leaning in to kiss me. It was different from our kisses in the freezer, less desperate, more deliberate. His hand cupped my face, thumb stroking my cheek as his lips moved against mine. When he pulled back, we were both a little breathless. I'll call you tomorrow, he promised. I nodded, not trusting my voice. As I drove home, I found myself touching my lips, still feeling the pressure of his kiss. Over the next few weeks, Theo and I fell into a rhythm. We worked our shifts at Savamart, maintaining a professional distance that fooled no one, especially after Gary's discovery in the freezer. After work, we'd often go to his apartment, which was small but cozy, decorated with bookshelves and vintage movie posters. On my days off, he'd sometimes meet me on campus, bringing coffee and sitting with me while I studied. It was during one of these campus visits, about a month after our freezer incident, that Theo first read my writing. I'd been working on a short story for my creative writing seminar, struggling with the ending. Theo had been sitting quietly beside me, reading a dog-eared copy of The Great Gatsby that he'd found at a thrift store. Can I ask your opinion on something? I said hesitantly. He looked up from his book. Always. I turned my laptop toward him. It's for my writing class. I'm not sure if the ending works. He set his book aside, giving the story his full attention. I watched his face as he read, trying to gauge his reaction from the subtle changes in his expression, the slight furrow of his brow, the occasional twitch of his lips. When he finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked up at me, his eyes wide with something like wonder. Declan, this is really good. Like really good. You're just saying that because you like me, I said, but I couldn't help the pleased flush that spread across my face. I'm saying it because it's true. He scrolled back through the document, pointing to specific passages. Your dialogue is so natural. And the way you describe the main character's isolation, it's beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. The story was about a college student struggling to find his place in the world. Not exactly original, but I'd poured a lot of myself into it. Hearing Theo's genuine appreciation made something tight in my chest loosen. The ending's a bit abrupt, he continued, but I think that works. It leaves the reader wanting more, wondering what happens next. You don't think it needs more resolution? He shook his head. Not everything in life gets tied up with a neat bow. Sometimes stories are better when they leave some questions unanswered. I took the laptop back, our fingers brushing in the exchange. Thanks. That actually helps a lot. Anytime. He leaned in to kiss me, quick but tender. I mean it, Declan. You've got real talent. That night, as we lay tangled together in his bed, the sheets cool against our warm skin, I found myself opening up to him in a way I rarely did with anyone. I told him about growing up in a small town where being different in any way made you a target, about realizing I was gay in high school but keeping it hidden, about coming to college and finally feeling free to be myself. "Is your family supportive?" he asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my bare shoulder. "They try," I said. "My mom more than my dad. It's a process. What about yours?" He was quiet for a long moment, his hands stilling on my skin. "My parents died when I was in high school. Car accident. That's why I moved in with my sister in Seattle for a while. Theo, I'm so sorry." I propped myself up on one elbow to look at him. "I had no idea." He offered a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's okay. It was a long time ago. My sister and we got through it together." "Is that why you dropped out of college? Something to do with your sister?" His expression clouded. "Partly. She got sick my senior year, breast cancer. I took a semester off to help her through chemo, then just never went back. Got the job at the marketing firm instead because it paid well and had good benefits I could add her to. And now? Is she okay?" "In remission for 2 years. His smile was genuine this time. "She's the one who convinced me to leave the firm after the engagement fell apart. Said life was too short to stay somewhere that made me miserable." I laid my head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "She sounds wise." "She is. You'd like her." His arms tightened around me. "Maybe you can meet her someday. She comes to visit occasionally." The casual implication that we had a someday made my heart swell. "I'd like that." As winter descended on the city, bringing with it short days and long nights, Theo and I grew closer. We spent Thanksgiving together, cooking a small feast in his apartment and FaceTiming with my family for dessert. My mother, always perceptive, had asked afterward if Theo was special. When I confirmed that yes, he was, she'd simply smiled and said she was happy for me. At Savamart, we'd become something of a fixture, the couple who met in the freezer, as our coworkers liked to remind us. Gary, after his initial surprise, had become our biggest supporter, often scheduling our breaks to coincide and turning a blind eye when we disappeared into the stockroom for a few minutes longer than necessary. It wasn't all smooth sailing. We had our disagreements, about my reluctance to fully commit to my writing, about his occasional recklessness with money, about the future and what it might hold for us. But even our arguments felt constructive, pushing us to understand each other better, to grow together rather than apart. One night in early December, we were working the closing shift together. The store was decorated for the holidays, with tinsel and fake snow adorning the displays. It had been a busy evening, a steady stream of customers stocking up before an approaching snowstorm. By the time the last customer left at midnight, we were both exhausted. "I never want to see another shopping cart again," I groaned as I leaned against the customer service desk. Theo, who had been counting the till, looked up with a grin. "Dramatic much? It wasn't that bad." "Easy for you to say. You weren't the one who had to deal with Mrs. Hamlin's expired coupons for 30 minutes. He laughed, finishing his count and sealing the money in the deposit bag. "Poor baby. How about this? Help me close up quickly, and I'll make it worth your while." "Is that a promise or a threat?" I asked, already moving to help straighten the front end of the store. "Definitely a promise." We worked efficiently, eager to be done. The snowstorm had started while we were closing, fat flakes swirling past the windows, already accumulating on the parking lot. By the time we were ready to leave, nearly an inch had fallen. "Looks like we might get snowed in," Theo said as we stood by the employee exit, peering out at the worsening weather. "Your place or mine?" The casual way he assumed we'd spend the night together, the natural rhythm we'd fallen into, filled me with a warmth that had nothing to do with the store's heating system. Yours is closer. And you have better coffee. He grinned, zipping up his heavy winter coat. Practical as always. Race you to the car? Before I could respond, he was out the door, jogging through the snow toward his car. I laughed and followed, the cold air shocking after the warmth of the store. Snowflakes caught in my eyelashes, melting against my cheeks as I chased after him. I caught up to him at his car, grabbing the back of his coat and spinning him around. His face was flushed from the cold, snowflakes clinging to his dark curls. Without thinking, I leaned in and kissed him, there in the parking lot of Savamart, snow falling around us like something out of a movie. When we broke apart, Theo was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What was that for?" he asked softly. "Because I wanted to," I said simply. "Because you make me happy." His smile was slow, spreading across his face like sunrise. "You make me happy too, Declan. More than I ever expected." We drove to his apartment in separate cars, the roads already slick with snow. Inside, we shed our wet coats and boots, shivering as we adjusted to the warmth. Theo made hot chocolate while I found a playlist of soft jazz on my phone, the music filling the small space. As we sat on his couch, mugs in hand, watching the snow through the window, I felt a sense of contentment I'd never experienced before. It wasn't just physical attraction or intellectual compatibility, though we had both in spades. It was something deeper, a feeling of having found a home in another person. "What are you thinking about?" Theo asked, noticing my contemplative silence. "Us," I admitted. "How unexpected this all is." "Good unexpected or bad unexpected?" "Definitely good." I set my mug down on the coffee table. "When I took that job at Savamart, I was just looking for extra cash. I never thought I'd find this." He smiled, reaching out to take my hand. "Life's funny that way. Sometimes the best things happen when you're not looking for them. Like getting locked in a freezer?" "Exactly like getting locked in a freezer." He set his own mug down and shifted closer to me on the couch. "Know what else is unexpected?" "What?" His eyes were serious now, the teasing gone from his voice. "How quickly I fell for you. How easy it is to imagine a future with you in it." My heart skipped a beat. "Theo, I know it's fast," he continued, his thumb tracing circles on my palm like he had that first night at the coffee shop. "And maybe I'm crazy for saying this after only a couple of months. But I love you, Declan. I'm in love with you." The words hung in the air between us, both terrifying and exhilarating. I'd been feeling it too, that deepening connection, but hadn't dared put a name to it yet. "You don't have to say it back," he added quickly when I didn't immediately respond. "I just wanted you to know." I looked at him, really looked at him. At the nervous set of his shoulders, the vulnerability in his eyes, the way he was trying to smile despite his obvious anxiety. This beautiful, complicated man who had crashed into my life and turned it upside down in the best possible way. "I love you too," I said, the words coming easier than I'd expected. "I think I have since that night in the freezer, when you put your arm around me and claimed it was for survival." His laugh was part relief, part joy. "It was for survival. My survival. I thought my heart was going to beat out of my chest." Smooth talker. I leaned in to kiss him, soft and lingering. "So what now?" "Now?" He pulled me closer until I was practically in his lap. "Now we enjoy tonight. And tomorrow. And see where this takes us." "I like that plan," I murmured against his lips. Outside, the snow continued to fall, coating the world in white. But inside Theo's apartment, wrapped in his arms, I was warmer than I'd ever been. The freezer that had brought us together seemed like a distant memory now, though I'd always be grateful for that locked door, that power failure that had given us the push we needed. Life, as Theo had said, was funny that way. Sometimes the coldest circumstances could lead to the warmest connections. And sometimes, what started as a simple job to pay the bills could lead to something far more valuable than money. As the night deepened and the snow piled up outside, Theo and I created our own warmth, our own shelter against the cold. In his small apartment, with jazz playing softly in the background and the soft glow of lamps creating shadows on the walls, we wrote another chapter in our unexpected story. Not every love story starts with a meet-cute in a coffee shop or a chance encounter at a party. Sometimes, it begins in a walk-in freezer at a grocery store, with two people huddling for warmth and finding something they weren't looking for but desperately needed. My name is Declan. I'm a 21-year-old junior at Westlake University who took a job at Savamart to make ends meet. What I found instead was Theo, and with him, a warmth that no freezer could ever extinguish.